to quickly isolate the most aggressive fish. Let's go now with some insights on how to pattern largemouth bass.
Nice jig fish. You know, a pattern is simply duplicating as many ways as possible where and when you're catching fish. Any kind of fish, not only bass. Hey, you know, a pattern can be as simple as buzzbaiting early in the morning for 2 hours in the back end of a cove, or it can get a little more complex, like, let's say, 4-inch black power worms on 8-pound test line with 1/8-ounce slip sinkers and 8 to 10 feet of water, only on windswept points and crawling it across the bottom. There's two kinds of patterns that you got to look for. One is a locational pattern, and one is a presentation pattern. Now, in presentation, there's 5 things that you always think about: depth, speed, size, action, and color, in that order. When I come on a lake to establish a pattern, I usually got like 6 rods rigged. I'll have 2 rods with like a buzzbait and a spinnerbait to clear some shallow water. I'll have a rattle bait or a spook on another rod to clear some flat areas. Then I'll have a jig and a craw or a plastic worm or a jig worm for deep water fishing or a crankbait. And I'll zing through these section of docks here and I'll fish those real quick, and then I'll come out on this flat back here. Then I'll hit this point or that point. I'm looking, where do I get my first bite? Is there fish in shallow water? Is there fish on the flats? Are they in deep water? And then I start fine-tuning it from there. I'm looking for a bite first. Oh. Size feels like a bass. Yeah. One not so bad one. One not so bad one. Pretty heavy little fish. You know what I've been doing is concentrating in about 10 foot of water. The weed line here in this particular system is about 12 feet deep. These bass aren't up in any shallower. They're not on the edge or out. They're just tucked in about 10 foot of water. I'm flipping a heavy jig, jig and pig, down in that 10-foot area. I'm concentrated as much as I can, so I'm fishing fish as much as I can. They don't want a fast-moving bait. They want that bait fished real, real slow. Crankbait or something moved horizontally just won't trigger them. Depth and speed are the key things you always want to pay attention to. The first 2 key factors in presentation. Water temperature is fairly cool now, and there's no question these fish do not want a fast-moving bait. They want that jig hitting them right in the face. They don't want to come up out of that coontail and run down anything. Speed is one of the elements of fishing that I really believe we got a lot to learn about. There's times that you can't move a bait fast enough to trigger fish. You've got to troll a lure to get them to bite. Now, saltwater fishermen have known that for years and have taken advantage of it. Freshwater anglers are just starting to key in on how important speed is. Sometimes it's a crawl, and sometimes it's just burning that bait. Pay attention to speed. It's really one of the key elements in making fish bite. Oh yeah! Ooh, big fish! Oh, boy, did that thing sock that dude. Ooh. Yeah. Even with that big old flipping stick, I felt that one, I'll tell you that. Look at the size of that fish. That is a beauty. That's more than a beauty, that's a giant. Oh, man. Let's talk a little bit about size and action and how that affects fish, how it makes fish bite. You know, size, the rule of thumb in picking any size bait generally is early in the season, you start with smaller lures. Come summer, you pick up size a little bit, and then when you get into fall, whether it's live bait or artificials, you go to really big bait, and that's basically what the forage is doing. That holds true for any species of fish anywhere in the country. Now, action, that's a little different program. Action is what you as an angler learn to impart in a bait. There's no lure made to be casted out and just simply reeled in. You can do different things with it. Let's take this jig as an example. I could be fishing a 3/4 ounce jig with pork on it, but ripping it off at the bottom and letting it fall real fast into the weeds, and that might be the triggering effect that it takes to get these big bass to hit. Another day, it might be a 1/4 ounce jig. Fished real slow, real subtle, and you leave it hit on bottom and it sits there and you shake it a little bit. That's where action comes into play. Action is what you as an angler learn to do with the different kinds of baits you're fishing. You impart the action in a lure. Always pay attention to what you were doing when you had that bite, as far as speed or jigs, or was I letting it fall, or was I picking up speed, and then start to duplicate that as much as possible. See that mat there? That's big clumps of coontail. These fish are buried down in that deep coontail. I'm just taking that bigger jig and letting it fall down into those mats. This is one of my favorite ways of catching big bass. Getting in this deep coontail, you take short casts like this, let it spool down so the bait falls down into those mats. I'm using heavy line, 20-pound Test XT in this case. You leave it sink through those mats there, I got bottom. When you fish deep cover like this, deep weeds, it's important not to make long casts. You don't want to make real long casts. If you make a long cast, it droops over the weeds and you don't drop the bait down right to it. Furthest is usually 15, 20 feet, just a small flip and let that line just slide down through those weeds. And you don't spend a lot of time jigging it. That fish is there or he ain't. You lift it once or twice, you don't get a bite, make another cast. I mean, you might only cast 5 feet away from your last cast. But when you get a mat like this that's holding these big fish, you know, I got probably a ½ acre of water in here that they're in, and I'm just moving in and out of this stuff. Getting a bite here, a bite there. You get one mat, you get 3 or 4 fish out of it. You know, I know one question a lot of you are asking yourself is, yeah, sure, but how long do I stay on a pattern without catching any fish? All right, I went up for a little while and I cleared some shallow water. I caught 1 bass on a spinnerbait. Now I went to 2 other good flat areas, put a little time in, never had another bite. I came back to the weed line, got bit right away. That told me all I had to know. I'm spending a little more time concentrating on these deeper fish than up on the flats. Not that I can't get a few fish up there, but when I'm getting this size quality fish on deep weed lines, it ain't gonna get any better than that. You know, you could have a lot of different patterns depending on the body of water you're in. If you're on a lake, a river, or a reservoir that has lots of good shallow water cover, you're going to be able to establish a couple shallow water patterns. If it's got good cover scattered across flats like weeds or stumps or something like this, it's a good bet that there's going to be some fish on those flats that can be patterned. And if it's got good deep water edges with cover along the edges, stump rows or weeds like we're fishing here, then you can have some deep water fish. The amount of cover and the way the lake is laid out will determine the patterns. There can easily be 2 really good patterns and a couple other patterns that are producing a few fish. Hey, remember one thing, not all the fish in a lake are doing the same thing at the same time. Oh, boy, that fish hit like a northern. Big fish. Oh, beauty. Boy, did that fish. She's coming up again. Look at the size of that puppy. Woo-hoo. Come on. Oh. All right. Okay, let's recap what we've been talking about. What are the 5 elements? Depth, most important. Speed, size, action, and color. And it's used for fine-tuning. Put them all together, and you catch more fish consistently. Any species of fish, not only bass.
Next on In Fisherman, a pattern for walleyes all season long.
Give me the throttle, I'll show you some speed. Give me a swamp and I'll saute some weeds. I was teased on stump, I was born to tow. I got a grip in that propeller and I'm itching to go. Stump breaking, weed shaking, Minn Kota fishing machine, yeah. Ain't no place to hide my 4-wheel drive.
Minn Kota, 4-wheel drive for your boat.
Darling, you look absolutely ravishing tonight.
Ooh, you impetuous Barracuda.
Good evening, Madame, Monsieur. May I suggest our specialty, the Berkeley Power Worm. The aroma, the flavor, the texture, magnifique.
Sounds divine.
Excellent, Pierre, the Power Worm.
Let go.
I won't, John.
Marcia.
Berkeley Power Bait. Science to us, but to fish, it's pure magic.
To give soft plastic baits more action underwater, fishermen will try almost anything. Try new Mustad needle power lock hooks. They're uniquely rated for more action underwater and less commotion above water.
Lund began building boats in 1948. 45 years later, the tradition of quality continues. What makes a Lund? Durable structure coupled with fishing features, like prolonged live wells that lead the industry in function and convenience. Electronics command consoles put switches, gauges, and electronics equipment within easy view. Helm stations are designed for you with all controls and accessories within easy reach. Let us build a Lund for you. See your Lund dealer today. Lund, a tradition of quality. Give a man a fish, and he eats for a day.